Arkan, Shalom, Shalom, Israel, Shalom to the Torah, Shazi Yashala. Allah to give all honor and glory and praise unto Yahweh Bahashim, Mahashiach, Malaki Abashah. That's all praises, honor, and glorification unto the Most High God, Yahweh, in the name of His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shah. This is Brother Yashala coming back to y'all with yet another video through the Spirit and power, Yahweh Bahashim, Mahashiach Abashah. All right, so as you can see, this is the Exodus chapter 21 breakdown. It's full of laws, various laws, laws going into fighting, laws going into servants, laws also going into oxen and your animals, how to deal with them, right? But first, let me get some precepts about the law, right? I'm gonna go to the New Testament, right? Because when you hear this word law, especially in the Christian church, you automatically think negative. Well, actually, the laws and commandments are actually seen as a good thing, even in the New Testament, right? Because they are still good, right? Even the Apostle Paul says that. Let's go to the book of Romans, chapter 7, and verse 12. Wherefore the law is holy, and the commandment holy and just and good. So the laws and commandments of the Most High God, they're holy and they're just and they're good. You can't get around that. That's plain and simple, right? Because that's what it also says in the so-called Old Testament, right? It's the same message. The law is holy and just and good. We still have to keep it, right? Why would the Most High do away with something that's good and holy and just, right? Let's go to the book of John, chapter 14 and verse 15, right? This is how you love Yahweh Shah. This is how you love so-called who the world refers to as Jesus Christ. This is how you love him according to him, right? This is a red letter, what I'm about to read. John chapter 14 and verse 15. If ye love me, keep my commandments. That's plain and simple, right? Yahweh Shah said that straight to the get-go, right? If you love me, keep my commandments. It's plain and simple. If you love the Most High and Yahweh Shah, you will keep his commandments. Let's go to the book of Revelation, chapter 14 and verse 12, right? It says, here is the patience of the saints, because the patience, it's like the saints. This is what they're doing, right? Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Yahweh Shah. So they not only have the faith of Yahweh Shah, but they also keep the commandments. So that's what we dived in today, all right? The commandments, the law, the Torah, all right? Exodus. So let's go to Exodus chapter 21, and also happy Ashar Feast of Unleavened Bread for all that's observing it this week, all right? Turning up in righteousness. But let's go to Exodus chapter 21 verse 1. All right, let's get to it. It says, now these are the judgments which thou shalt set before them. Now, actually, I want to share the screen. All right, I want to share the screen so you can see where I'm reading. All right, because it's going to be a chapter breakdown. So, all right, so Exodus chapter 21 and verse 1. All right, Exodus chapter 21 verse 1. All right, it says, right? It says, now these are the judgments which thou shalt set before them, right? Verse 2, if thou buy an Hebrew servant, 6 years shall he serve, and in the 7th he shall go out free for nothing. So if you buy a Hebrew servant, because you're allowed to buy a Hebrew servant, yes, this is going into an Israelite servant. You can buy an Israelite servant, but he only could serve for 6 years. That's it, right? Only for 6 years. And in the 7th, he shall go out free, right? He doesn't have to pay anything, because guess what? He could only serve for 6 years unless by consent, right? If it extends longer than 6 years, that's going off, right? But you could buy an Israelite servant. Let's get a precept on that. In the ancient world, let's go to the book of Exodus, chapter 12 and verse 44. It says, right? I'm gonna start at verse 43. It says, and the Lord said unto Moses and Aaron, this is the ordinance of the Passover. There shall no stranger eat thereof. So the Passover, right, was just passed on the 26th. We kept it on the 26th at sundown, right? The Passover, Slaki. Yeah, Slaki. So the Passover, heathens can't eat at the Passover. That's what that means. No stranger shall eat thereof, right? So you can't bring heathen to the Passover. You can't bring your Edomite friend to the Passover, all right, and eat. That's going off. Verse 44. But every man servant that is Slaki, but every man servant that is bought for money, when thou hast circumcised him, then shall he eat thereof. You see that? So it's speaking about what? If you have a manservant and you circumcise him, he can eat of the Passover. You see that? Because he's still an Israelite. All right. So you could have a Israelite servant. All right. In Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 12, it recites it again. Right? Because remember, Deuteronomy means second law. All right. Deuteronomy chapter 15 and verse 12. It says, and if thy brother, an Hebrew man or an Hebrew woman, be sold unto thee and serve thee 6 years, then in the 7th year thou shalt let him go free from thee. You see that? So you could let him go. All right. You have to let him go in the 7th year. All right. So that's what that means. All right. Verse 3. And if he came in by himself, meaning he was a servant, right? You bought him by himself, right? If he came in by himself, he shall go out by himself, right? He came in by himself, he had to go out by himself. He's a servant, right? If he were married, then his wife shall go out with him. Verse 4, if his master have given him a wife. So if his master gave him a wife, right? And she have borne him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be made her masters. Slakia shall be her masters, and he shall go out by himself. Now hold on. You might read this, might be like, well, that's kind of messed up. How come he can't leave with them? Right? How come he had to go out by himself when he leaves in the 7th year? It's because the master have given him a wife. Because if a master gave him the servant a wife, that means that this woman is also a maidservant of his. It's his property. So if he gives this woman, if he gives this man, his manservant, a woman, this woman is his property. So it's like basically him giving him his property, right? And she shall have borne him sons and daughters. Those sons and those daughters born of that wife and of that manservant is his. That's all his property, right? The wife and her children shall be her masters, and he shall go out by himself. You see that? Verse 5. But here's a scenario, right? A possible scenario. Verse 5. And if the servant shall plainly say, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free. You see that? So if the servant just flat out says that I love my master, right? I love my wife, my children. I'm not going to go out by myself. I can't leave them, right? Then what? Well, before we go to that, let's examine the scripture. Because why is the servant saying, I love my master? Because when we think of slavery, we always think of slavery as bad. Well, yes, it is bad, right? When Esau had us in slavery, right? When Esau had us in slavery, it was very, very, very bad, right? That's called just ruling us with rigor. When the Hamites had us in slavery, when the other nations had us in slavery, it was really, really bad. But when we have servants of our own people, of our own brothers and sisters, we don't treat them with rigor. We don't rule over them like how the heathen rule over us. Not at all. We treat them with love, right? Let's get this in the law. Let's go to the book of Leviticus, chapter 25 and verse 40, right? Leviticus chapter 25 and verse 40, right? 43. I'm going to start Slakia. Verse 42. For they are my servants, which I brought forth out of the land of Egypt. They shall not be sold as bondmen. Thou shalt not rule over them with rigor, but shall fear thy God. You see that? So you couldn't rule over your servant with rigor, right? Just oppressing him. You know, like how the heathen put us in slavery. We can't do that, all right, with our own people. I'm going to skip down to verse 46. And ye shall take them as an inheritance for your children after you, to inherit them for a possession. So this is literally chattel slavery for the heathen. You can put the heathen, right, the other nations into slavery, but like chattel slavery, you can rule over them with rigor. The Lord is going to give us in that day, Lord willing, we overcome. When you read that in the book of Revelation, chapter 2, right, we're going to rule over these nations with a rod of iron, right? It says they shall be your bondmen forever. This is chattel slavery, right? With the heathen, but not with our own people. Watch this. It says, but over your brethren, the children of Israel, ye shall not rule one over another with rigor. So you could oppress and rule over a rigor with the heathen, but you couldn't do that with your own brother, right? That's it, fellow Israelite. All right. These commandments is love, right? For your own nation, though. I also had this precept in the book of Sirach. Let's go to Sirach chapter 33. Sirach chapter 33 and verse 31. I'm gonna start at verse 30, right? If thou have a servant, let him be unto thee as thyself, because thou hast bought him with a price. Right? If you have a servant, treat him like you treat yourself. Love your brother as you love yourself, right? If thou have a servant, entreat him as a brother. So we entreated our servants as brothers, man. That's why this scenario is even here. I love my master, my wife, my children, right? I will not go out free. I love my master, right? I don't want to leave him because we treated our servants like brothers, right? Because they are our brothers. And treat them as a brother, for thou hast need of him. Right? You have need of the servant. That's why you're paying him. That's why you hired him, right? You have need of him. As of thine own soul, if thou entreat him evil and he run from thee, which way wilt thou go to seek him? Exactly. If he runs away, how are you going to catch him? You don't know where he's going, right? Let's go back to this, all right? Let's go back. Exodus chapter 21. Exodus chapter 21 and verse 6, right? Then his master shall bring him unto the judges. So let's say going back to the scenario, let's say the servant doesn't want to go out free, right? Doesn't want to go out without his, wife, children, stuff like that, right? Verse 6, then his master shall bring him unto the judges. So the master had to bring him unto the judges. He shall also bring him to the door or unto the doorpost, and his master shall bore his ear with through with an awl, and he shall serve him forever, right? See that? So his master had to bring him to the door or the doorpost. The master had to basically pierce him publicly with an awl, right? And then the servant will be the servant's master, or the master's servant forever, right? But that's by his own consent. It's not you can have your fellow Israelites in slavery forever against their will. This is by consent, right? The servant is saying, hey, you know what? It's cool. I can be a servant for life, and then this procedure will be done, right? Now, what is an old? Let's look it up. This is what an old is, right? So this is what they would be pierced with. This is an ancient one, though, right? This is an ancient one. So it will most likely look like this. You'll pierce his ear, right? I'm speculating that this is a sign, right? This is a sign that, look, I'm a servant forever. So, because remember, we couldn't have our fellow Israelites as servants for more than 6 years, right? It had to be only 6 years. In the 7th year, he'll be released, right? That was the law. But you can have him for a slave forever by his own consent if he wanted to. Then you'll bore his ear, right? Verse 7. And if a man shall sell his daughter to be a maidservant, she shall not go out as the manservants do. So a maidservant, the law with the maidservants is a little different, right? Verse 8. If she please not her master, so if the maidservant doesn't please her master, who have betrothed her to himself, then shall he let her be redeemed. So he has to let her be bought again. If the master doesn't like the maidservant, then he has to let her be able to be sold again, right? That's what that means. To sell her unto a strange nation, he shall have no power, seeing he hath dealt deceitfully with her. Basically, he has broken the covenant with her, right? Or broken the contract, rather. But it says that he couldn't sell her to a strange nation. You couldn't sell you couldn't sell her onto a damn Moabite. You couldn't sell her onto a damn Ishmaelite. You had to sell her with your own nation. See, these laws, when you study the laws, it deals with brotherly and sisterly love with one another, with your own nation. These other nations, they have laws that benefit themselves. Like Esau, they have laws that benefit themselves, the Moabites and Ishmaelites. So we also have to have laws And these are all laws that benefit ourselves because we have to prefer one another, right? Let's go to the book of Romans, right? It's the book of Romans. Right, it's lucky. Romans chapter 12 and verse 10. It says, be kindly affectionate one to another with brotherly love and honor, preferring one another. So we prefer one another. These laws help us to prefer one another, right? So come. Exodus chapter 21 and verse 9, right? Exodus 21 and 9, right? It says, and if he have betrothed her unto his son, he shall deal with her after the manner of daughters. So meaning that if you gave this maid servant onto your son, right, then let's say you're the master, you had to deal with the woman now she's your own daughter, right? So that's what that means. He shall deal with her after the manner of daughters. You have to treat her like you would treat your own daughter. Verse 10, if he take him another wife, her food, her raiment, and her duty of marriage shall he not diminish. So let's say you have a wife and you take another wife, right? So this proves that polygyny is in the scriptures and it's lawful. It's not against the Most High if you have more than one wife. Plain and simple. If he take him another wife, right? Her food, her raiment, and her duty of marriage shall he not diminish. Meaning, if you take another wife, you have two wives now. You have to provide for her. You have to provide for her food. You have to provide for her raiment, her clothing, right? That's what that means. And you have to provide her duty of marriage. What's the duty of marriage? Duty of marriage is what? Lying down with one another. Yeah. Sexual relations. You had to fulfill that duty, right? Shall he not diminish? So, because remember, you have to do that with one wife. Well, let's get the precept. Let's go to the book of 1 Timothy. Because remember, people think that, just having two wives, or you just full of lust, you just want all the women. It's not about that. Because remember, in the ancient world, women were valuable assets. They had to help around in the house. But guess what? The man, if the man has more than one wife, you had to, according to our laws, you had to provide for all of them, right? These three things. You see that? Let's go to 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 8. Let's say you can't. Right? 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 8. But if any provide not for his own, and especially for those of his own house, he have denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. So if you can't provide for your house, Paul is saying that you have denied the faith and you're worse than someone that doesn't believe. That's what an infidel is, right? So remember, having two wives is not always seen as a lustful thing. It's not full of lust, right? In fact, you have to, now the man has more duty. He has more responsibility with now that he's in a polygamous relationship, right? Verse 11. So going back to Exodus 21:11, right? And also, hold on, let me get this precept real quick, right? It's the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 7. 1 Corinthians 7 and verse 3. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. You see that? So the husband, he had to render the woman due benevolence, which is if the woman wants to, lie down, right, and sleep together, in that sense, in a sexual sense, then that man had to fulfill that duty, right? He had to do that. Verse 11. And if he do not these three things unto her, meaning if he can't fulfill this, right, if he can't provide for the food, the raiment, and the duty of marriage, then she shall go out free without money. So she had to leave, right? Or she could leave, right? Verse 12. Now is going to personal injuries, right? Verse 12. He that smiteth a man so that he die shall be surely be put to death. So if you smite a man, if you hit somebody with a fatal blow that he die, then you will be killed too, because that's murder right there, right? That's murder. But this is going into fellow Israelites though, right? Because remember, when you go to Exodus chapter 20, right? Exodus chapter 20. in verse 13, right? It says, "Thou shalt not kill." This word for kill in the Hebrew is actually going into murder. Thou shalt not murder, right? Because this is murder right here, right? That's why this guy is this person is being put to death, right? Verse 13. "And if a man lie not in wait, but God deliver him into his hand, then I'll appoint thee a place whither he shall flee," right? So if the man doesn't lie in wait, meaning what? He's not plotting to kill, right? This is unintentionally, right? If somebody unintentionally kills somebody, right, but God deliver him into his hand, then I will appoint thee a place whither he shall flee. This place whither he shall flee is going into a place of refuge, a city of refuge, right? And you can read about that in the book of Deuteronomy. A city of refuge would be, let's say somebody unintentionally kills somebody, or an Israelite unintentionally kills another Israelite. He's able to flee into one of the cities of refuge, and he'll be safe there, right? So that's the place whither he shall flee, that the Most High will appoint, right? You can read about that for yourself in the book of Deuteronomy, all right? Verse 14, "And if a man come presumptuously upon his neighbor to slay him with guile, thou shalt take him from my altar that he may die." You see that? So if you come presumptuously, meaning with arrogance, and you intentionally kill somebody, kill your fellow neighbor, your fellow Israelite, slay him with guile, then you're going to die, right? You're going to suffer death, right? Hey, that's an eye for an eye. We're going to read that too, right? Let's get this. Colossians chapter 3 and verse 25. "But he that doeth wrong shall receive for the wrong which he hath done, and there is no respecter of persons." All right, so there's no respecter of the persons with the Most High. You're going to get that which you put out. All right. Verse 15. "And he that smiteth his mother, he that smiteth his father or his mother shall surely be put to death." That's off his hell, right? That's off his hell. You can't fight your dad, right? You can't hate your dad. You can't hate your mom, right? That's going off. That's not honoring your parents. Exodus chapter 20 and verse 12. "Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee." You're supposed to honor your father and your mother, man. Right? Honoring your father and your mother goes into what? Respecting them, doing as they say, and not hitting them, right? Not fighting them. That's going off. "And he that smiteth his father or his mother shall surely be put to death." All right? That's plain. Verse 16. And he that stealeth the man and selleth him, or if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. So if you steal a man and sell him, right? This is going into what? Kidnapping. If you kidnap an Israelite and you sell him, or if you're found in the action, caught red-handed, right? You're going to be put to death. And guess what? We also apply this to Esau, because Esau stole us from the shores of West Africa. He also sold us, right? Because remember, Deuteronomy 28:68, "And ye shall be sold unto your enemies, bondmen and bondwomen," right? We were sold on auction blocks, right? And we're also found in his hand. We're still found in America. We haven't gone back to Israel, right? "He shall surely be put to death." So Esau is going to be put to death. And if any Israelite also kidnaps an Israelite, you're also going to be put to death, according to the law. All right? Verse 17. "And he that curseth his father or his mother shall surely be put to death." So you can't curse your father or your mother. All right? That's off. You can't curse your father or your mother. All right? Let me get this precept. It's a book of Proverbs. Let me see. Proverbs. It's the book of Proverbs, chapter 20, verse 20. "Whoso curseth his father or his mother, his lamp shall be put out in obscure darkness." You see that? So you can't, you can't curse your father and your mother, all right? Or your lamp is going to be put out, thus saith the Lord. And what is the lamp? Your lamp is your spirit, all right? Pursuing the book of Proverbs, I believe. All right, Exodus 21 and 18. "And if men strive together, and one smite another with a stone or with his fist, and he die not, but keepeth his bed, So if men are striving together, right, they're fighting, and one smite another with the stone, right, or with his fist, but the guy that was hit, he doesn't die, but keepeth his bed. What does it mean to keep your bed? Meaning that he's in the bed, right? He's damaged, right? He's just lying down in the bed, trying to recover, right? Maybe like a hospital bed or whatever. Verse 19. If he rise again, meaning he's able to rise, right, and walk abroad upon his staff. Maybe you got a stab because you like, damn, you got hit in the head, right? Or you got hit in the leg or whatever, right? You got a staff and people is helping you up and stuff, right? But you're able to walk, right? Then shall he that smote him be quit. Meaning the guy who hit him, he's not going to be liable. He's not going to be put to death, right? But guess what? He has to what? Only he shall pay for the loss of his time. Because hey, let's say he was in the bed for like 2 weeks, man. You know what I'm saying? For 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks he could have been working, he could have been trading, he could have been earning money, but now he has lost time, right? So now you have to pay for his lost time, right? And shall cause him to be thoroughly healed. So you have to help him be healed, man. See, these laws teach help. These laws teach love, right? So you have to help your brother, man. Verse 20. And if a man smite his servant or his maid with a rod, and he die under his hand, he shall be surely punished. So you can't smite your servant or your maid, right, with a rod, and then he or she die, right? Or else you're going to be punished, right? Because remember, your servant is still your servant, and your maid is still your maid, even though that's your property. It's still a person, right? Verse 21. Notwithstanding, if he continue a day or two, meaning that maid or that servant or that manservant, right, is able to recover in a day or two, right? He shall not be punished, for he is his money. See that? That's your property. That's your money. You know what I'm saying? Verse 22. If men strive and hurt a woman with child. So let's say 2 men are fighting, right? Boom, boom, boom. And you know how it gets crazy, man. Jakes get crazy, man. They start fighting and they hurt a woman with child. Let's say, kind of push a woman with child over, right? On accident, of course, hurt a woman with child so that her fruit depart from her, meaning that she has a miscarriage, right? I believe it's like not a miscarriage. She has a premature birth. Her fruit depart from her. She has a premature birth, right? The baby comes out prematurely before, the allotted time, the 9 to 10 months, right? And yet no mischief follow, meaning that's it. The baby's fine, you know what I'm saying? The woman's fine, that's it, right? No mischief follow. He shall be surely punished, according as a woman's husband will lay upon him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. So there's still going to be a punishment, right? But it's according to the woman's husband, according to what he wants done, and according as the judges determine, right? Verse 23. And if any mischief follow, then thou shalt give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. Right? Stripe for stripe. You see that? That's how the Lord rolls, man. You give a life for a life. All right? You see that? That's how the Lord rolls. You can also read in Matthew chapter 5. Yahweh also came to radicalize that and to show that, look, you have to show mercy to your brother and to your fellow sister, right? But guess what? The Most High, he's still dealing with these nations like this, right? Because guess what? Let's go to Revelation chapter 13, verse 10. The Most High, he's still dealing with the nations like this, right? What do I mean by that? Let's go to Revelation chapter 13, verse 10. It says, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. If you lead a nation of people into captivity, you are going into captivity. That's an eye for an eye, right? He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. If you kill with the sword, you're going to be killed with the sword. That's a life for a life. Here's the patience and the faith of the saints. And that's the impending judgment on all these damn nations that put us into slavery, man. Right? The Israelites. That put the Israelites into slavery. All right? Let's go back to this. Exodus chapter 21 and verse 26. Right? Exodus chapter 21, verse 26. And it reads, right? Salaki. Come. It says, and if a man smite the eye of his servant or the eye of his maid that it perish, he shall let him go free for his eye's sake. So if you smite the eye of your servant, right, or the eye of your maid, and that it perish, that it's so bad, you have to let him go, right, for their eye. Verse 27. And if he smite out his manservant's tooth or his maidservant's tooth, he shall let him go free for his tooth's sake. So that's plain, right? Verse 28. If an ox, so now it's switching to the ox, right, and to the animals. If an ox gore a man or a woman, that they die. What does that mean? An ox gores a man or a woman, meaning that an ox attacks a man or a woman, right, and it gores him, hits him with the damn horns and stuff, right, that they die. Then the ox shall be surely stoned, and his flesh shall not be eaten, but the owner of the ox shall be quit. So meaning that what? If the ox kills a man or a woman, right, with his horns and whatnot, then the ox has to be stoned, has to be killed, right? And his flesh shall not be eaten. So you couldn't eat that ox that killed that man or a woman, right? But the owner of the ox, the ox that owned, it's like the owner that owned that ox, he shall be quit, meaning he's not going to be liable. He doesn't have to pay anything. He's not going to be punished, right? But here's another case, verse 29. But if the ox were wont to push with his horn in time past, meaning if the ox, right, was were wont, meaning to push his horn in time past, meaning that he had a history of pushing his horn, of attacking people. If he already had a history of that, and it have been testified to his owner, meaning the owner knows that this particular ox is hard-headed and he attacks people and kills people, right? He knew that, and he have not kept him in, meaning he didn't put him somewhere, chain him up, or put him in a barn or whatever. He still let him out in the open, right? But that he have killed a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, and his owner shall also be put to death, because the owner knew that this hard-headed ass ox would always attack people and would be dangerous. So the owner will be killed, and the ox will also be stoned as well, right? Verse 30. If there be laid on him a sum of money, right? Meaning, let's say the family of a person that was killed by this owner's ox, right? The family says, all right, hey, we'll lay upon you a sum of money, right? We'll give you a payment for you to pay for your ransom of life, right? It says, if there be laid on him a sum of money, that he shall give for the ransom of his life whatsoever is laid upon him. Meaning that, like, let's say the family of the victim was merciful and said, look, just pay us 30 shekels of silver and you'll be fine. You don't have to lose your life, right? That could be possible. And so whatever ransom, whatever payment is put onto that owner, he had to pay it for his life, or else you'll lose his life, right? Verse 31. Whether he have gored a son or have gored a daughter, according to this judgment shall it be done unto him, right? So whether it was a son or a daughter, this judgment, right, it shall be done unto him. Verse 32. If the ox shall push a manservant or a maidservant, he shall give unto their masters 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. Right? So the ox had to be stoned, but he shall give unto their master 30 shekels of silver. So if the ox kills a manservant or a maidservant, right, the master had to pay 30 shekels of slaki. The owner had to pay their master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox had to be stoned as well. Verse 33. And if a man shall open a pit, or if a man shall dig a pit and shall not cover it, right? All right, come. It says, if a man shall open a pit, or if a man shall dig a pit and not cover it, and an ox or an ass fall therein. So let's say, a man has a pit open, right? Has a pit open, or a man, he digs a pit, a hole, right? But he doesn't cover it, and an ox comes along, or an ass comes along, and he falls therein, right? He falls into the pit or into the hole. The owner of the pit shall make it good, and give money unto the owner of them, and the dead beast shall be his. So the owner of the pit, he had to make it good. How? And give money onto the owner, right? He had to give money onto the owner of the ox or onto that ass, right? And the dead beast shall be his. Let's say the ox, he falls and he dies, the dead beast shall be his, right? Verse 35. And if one man's ox hurt another's, that he die, then they shall sell the live ox and divide the money of it, and the dead ox also they shall divide. So let's read that again, right? And if one man's ox hurt another, so if one man's ox hurts another man's ox, right? That he died, right? So this man's ox killed the other ox, right? And it died, right? Then they shall sell the live ox. So they had to sell the live ox and divide the money of it. So they had to sell the ox, and whatever money that they get from selling that ox that killed the other one, they had to divide the money equally with each other, right? And the dead ox also they shall divide, right? So they have to divide the dead ox as well, right? It's lucky, right? It says, then they shall sell the live ox and divide the money of it, and the dead ox also they shall divide. So the dead ox also they divided between equally between each other. You know, you have that part, I'll have this part. Cool, we all cool, right? So these laws, you know, they teach love, man, between our brothers, right? Between our nation, right? With each other, all right? Verse 36. Or if it be known that the ox have put used to push in time past, meaning this ox, in time past in history, this ox has been known to be dangerous, right? If that's already been known and his owner have not kept him in, meaning, you know, going back to that previous law, you know, the owner didn't keep him in. In fact, he didn't care. He just let him roam around freely, knowing that this hard-headed ass ox kills people and you know is vicious and is dangerous, right? What happens? He shall surely pay ox for ox, and the dead shall be his own. You see that? So you have to pay ox for ox. I'll give you this ox for that ox that was, you know, killed by my ox. If that makes sense, right? So that was Exodus chapter 21. All right, Exodus chapter 21 breakdown. Lord willing, this was edifying. All right. Lord willing, this was edifying. This is going into you know, the various laws, right? We should be studying the laws because the laws is the milk, right? Let's just get this real quick. The laws consist of the milk, right? Let's get this precept. This is the book of Hebrews, right? Hebrews chapter 5 and verse 12. For when for the time ye ought to be teachers, ye have need that one teach you again, which be the first principles of the oracles of God, and are become such as have need of milk and not of strong meat. You see that? So the first principles of the oracles of the Most High is going into what? The laws, right? And basically the basics of the scriptures. You know what I'm saying? The milk, the basics, right? And the basics is going into the law. But we also know that the law is also spiritual. You know, the law is also spiritual. But Khan, with that, I'd like to give all honor, glory, and praise unto Yahweh Shema Mashiach Abashah. Lord willing, this was edifying. Shalom. Kwam Yashala.